Alright, so in this video we're going to cover day 3 of Unity. And so here we're going to do a couple things. We're going to create a projectile with some simple functionality. Basically shoot our projectile left, shoot it right, and ideally have it destroy an enemy when it hits the enemy. Then we're also going to create a simple counting system with collectibles where we can create a collectible and have it so when our player overlaps it, they will collect it and add one to a little UI element scoreboard on our screen. And then also quick, I just want to show you how to update an asset. So right now, I have these rocks in my scene, and if we press play, these are the ones we set up to just when I walk into them, they're destroyed. They're basically my enemies. So I created a enemy asset that I want to replace these with. Um, so how to do that? I'm just going to start. I'm going to go to my assets. I'm going to right click. I'm going to import a new asset. I'm going to go to my folder where I'm storing them. I'm going to do Unity assets. I'm going to grab my enemy sprite. And I'm also going to grab my projectile sprite, which we're going to use in a second. So I'm going to import those. And now I got them. So if I go to my prefab folder, I have this prefab rock, which are these guys, and they already got my colliders on them. So if I want to update it, switch the sprite around, what I can do is if I double click the rock, we'll open the prefab in its own window, and now we have access to all the settings we need to change it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the sprite to, let's see, or actually easier, I'm just going to go back to my assets folder, open my new enemy sprite, and drag it in. And now you can see it updated my sprite and updated my enemy. Now, obviously it's too big, so I'm going to go ahead and scale it down. That should update in the scene. So I'm going to leave them kind of big. I'm going to rotate it. And then, likewise, I'll need to readjust my collider to be appropriately sized for this new sprite. So when it's good, I'll press the little arrow over here to go back, and now I got my new enemy created. And I can drag in from my prefabs more of them to place around. Alright, so let's start the projectile. Step 1 is we got to build our projectile prefab. So I'm going to drag in my projectile sprite. I'm going to set it to the playable area sorting layer, so it's in front, and then I want it in front of everything, so I'm going to set it to layer 5, or order in layer 5, so it's the highest in the stack. I'm going to kind of compare it to my player here, and I'm just going to scale it down till it's a size I like, and then to it I'm going to add a collider, add component, physics 2D, circle collider, resize the collider a bit, and then I'm also going to add a physics 2D, rigid body 2D. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab my project move script, which you should already have in your scene. If not, it'll be in the Google Drive. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that to my projectile as well. So now I have 3 components on my projectile. So once that's built, I'm going to go to my prefabs folder, and I'm going to drag the projectile from the prefab, or from the hierarchy, into the prefab folder, and now I have a prefab projectile to work with. I'm going to go ahead and name this one projectile left, and I'm going to come over to the project move script within the projectile left. I'm going to change its velocity x to 10, and then last I'm going to copy paste to duplicate it, and then in the new one I'm going to rename it to projectile right, and I'm going to set the velocity x to -10. Now, if you have a sprite that's not as symmetrical as mine is, you can, in the sprite renderer here, you can flip the x so that they're facing the right direction. So obviously our projectile right will spawn on the right, and when we're facing the left, projectile left will spawn. So once you have those created, we're ready for the next step. And the next step will be to update our code. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hop into our script folder. We're going to open our player controller. So in our player controller, do this now. In our player controller, we're going to update some stuff. First thing I'm going to do actually is, we did this in class, but if you haven't yet, now's a good opportunity to, is I'm just going to clean this code up a bit. We have a bunch of these commented out sections that are not needed, so I'm just going to go through and I'm going to delete them quick, just so they're not in our way. As you're deleting stuff, just be careful you don't mess up the brackets too much. So just gonna go in here, delete these, maybe get rid of some of these extra lines if put some of these down. Just for me, I find it easier to see what's going on if you don't got all that extra fluff. Okay, so once we got that good, let's go ahead and grab our document over here, and we're going to copy over some new stuff. So we're in our day 3 section. So this first group is some new variables. I'm going to copy those, put those right on the variable list here. So we got a new variety of variables. We got some new public game objects. This is where we'll plug in our projectile right and left, and then some new ones that adjust the fire rate. Next, we have a new if statement that basically says when we hit the left mouse button, if everything's good, run the fire function. So this we're going to copy, and I'm going to come into the void fixed update near the bottom here, and then in between the last two brackets of the void fixed update, I'm going to copy all this, and then just paste it right here. So we add that additional void fixed update. And lastly, I'm going to grab this whole new void fire function, and we're going to bring it in here. We're going to go under the void on collision enter, and we'll place it right between these last two brackets. So now, if we look, we have in the updates, we have if input.get key down, key code mouse 0, that's your left mouse. So if we press that and time is greater than the next fire rate, which is just referencing some variables, run the fire command. Now the fire command just says, depending on which direction we're facing, spawn a bullet and give it some velocity in the given direction. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to minimize that, move this out of the way, come back to Unity, let it update. Hit the console quick, check for any errors. If you have any errors, go ahead and read through what they say, because they'll often point you to a line of code and tell you a description of what the problem might be. But now that I got those plugged in, I need to go to my character, come down to the player controller script section, and you'll see we have project right, project left, and we have two spots for some prefabs. So I'm going to go grab my projectile left and right and plug them into those slots. So I'll put my left in the left and my right in the right. And for testing, I found fire rate at 0.01. Worked pretty well. So now I'm going to play. No errors, so we're good. And now when I move around, I can press the left mouse button to fire some projectiles. Cool. So a little more functionality I want to add, and actually quick, just because it's bothering me. I want to adjust this camera offset. So it was at -44, so I'm just going to change it to 0.44. Just to fix the offset. So a little more functionality I want to add here is I want to make it so when it hits our enemy, it destroys them. So a couple spots we could add that bit of code, but where we're going to add it is in the project move script. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my scripts folder, open the project move. And now we have it open here, and I'm actually going to go to my player controller, and I'm going to grab this on collision enter 2D script. So if I grab from this last bracket here, drag up to the void, so we have all the brackets we need, copy, go to the project move, and then between these last two brackets, I'm going to press enter to give myself a line, and I'm going to paste this in here. So now in our particle, or our projectile that's flying across the screen, we have a new function that says when it collides with an object tagged as enemy, spawn a particle and destroy a game object. Now, if we tried to play this right now, we'd get an error because right now we're trying to spawn a particle, but we have no reference to the particle within our variables. So we just got to add that variable back in. And we actually have in our, if we scroll up a bit into the day 2 stuff, the last little section here is public game object particle. If we copy that, that's the variable we need. So I'm just going to go up to my variable list and paste that in. So once that's pasted in, let's save it. Let's come back here, let it update. Then I'm going to go to my prefabs. I'm going to select my particle left, and we can see now in the project move script, there's a new particle slot. I'm going to grab the particle I created earlier, plug it in, grab the particle I played earlier, plug it in, so that I have a particle plugged into both of my projectiles. Great. Now let's play. So this one here may try to fly away and destroy them. Yeah. Destroyed both of them. Okay, so after we're done making our projectile, we're basically just using the viewport as a means to build it. But once it's created and we create a prefab of it, we don't actually need this one in the scene anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one. Now we can press play again. And I can go back and forth, and I can fire a projectile. Maybe. Yep, there we go. And it destroys my enemy. So it destroys them because they're tagged as an enemy. Great. So that's creating a projectile. And so, yeah, on to the next thing. What we're going to do next is our first bit of UI. And this is a mechanic we can use later to help us basically like beat the game, like have a win condition. So we're going to create a collectible, and then we're going to be able to pick up the collectible and add its value to our score. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a couple new scripts. Now these scripts are in the day 3 scripts of the Google Drive. We should have collectible counter and collect object. I'm going to go ahead and import those. So I got them in my scene. And I'm going to go ahead and build my collectible. So if you have a specific collectible sprite, go ahead and grab that. I'm just going to use this little guy. As with everything, put it on the correct layer. I'm going to put it in the playable area, and I'm just going to set it to like 2. Basically line it up to where you want it to be. Resize it. And then to it, we're going to add a collider to it. So I'm just going to add physics 2D collider. I'll just leave it at default. Looks pretty good. And there we go. One more thing we're going to add to this is go to our scripts, and we're going to apply our collect object script to this guy. So we're going to add the collect object script. And now, once this is all built with its collider and its script, we can go ahead and drag it into our prefabs and rename it, call it collectible. And there we go. Now I'll delete this one I placed in there earlier, or once my prefab's made, I can delete the one that I used to construct, and now I can place in some collectibles. But they're not going to collect quite yet. So next step, after our collectibles built, is we got to make our little bit of UI. So I'm going to right click in my hierarchy, I'm going to come down to UI, and I'm going to go Legacy and select Text. Now we can probably use this Text Mesh Pro, which is like a newer version, but in this example we're just going to use the text. And when you create it, it's going to add a canvas to your scene as well as the text object. Now if we zoom out here, we can see what it created. So this bigger rectangle is the canvas, and right now it's just really big. So if we select the canvas, go over to the inspector, and go down to the canvas section and change the render mode. If we change it to screen space camera, and then drag our main camera from the scene into the render camera, it'll now match the canvas to the size of our viewport, or to our camera. So think of the canvas kind of like a place to store all our different UI elements. Now I can select the text, and I can drag it up into place. I'm just going to put it up in the corner. Then I'll come over here to the settings. You could change the font here. You can just simply, wherever you'd like to get fonts, download a font, drag it into your project folder, and then plug it in right here. It works as simply as that. But change the size, make it 30. It went away because now the text box is too small, so I can go up here and adjust the width. Where did my mouse go? And the height, so that my text comes back. You want to make sure you make your text box plenty big, because as it adds more numbers to it, it might expand and you don't want it to get cut off. So I'm just also going to change the color, and I'm going to set it to bold. Cool. So we don't actually have to change the text because we're going to control the text within the code. So next little bit of code to add, we're going to select our text object, go to our scripts, and grab the collectible counter script. If I drag this out, we can see it right here, collectible counter. We're going to drag that as a new component onto the text object. Cool. So let's open these up, these two scripts, and see what they do. So if we look at our collectible counter, we have a couple new groups it's using. So it's using the UI stuff, has a public variable called points, and then it has the text object. So what this is saying is when it's awake, so as soon as it's called at all, set the text to what we have the text set to down here, and set the points to 0. And down here on the update, it says to make the text equal to score. So if you want to change what the text is, this is where you change it. And so it's going to make it to score plus whatever the value of points is, the variable points. So if we go back to collect object, so this is the one on our collectible, we have on collision enter 2D, when we're colliding with a object tagged as a player, take the value of points from our other, so this is referencing that other script, take the value of points and add our collectible value to it, and then destroy the game object. So we shouldn't need to update these at all, but if I save these, let's see how it runs. Back in Unity, I'm going to press play, and if everything functions right, our new text, or our text will change to whatever we have it in our code, so score plus the variable for points. And then whenever I cross a point, it should disappear. So we just mess something up, and it's an easy fix. Because remember, on our collectible, it needs the colliding object to be tagged as a player, and we just haven't done that yet. So if I select my player character, and then come on over here to the tags, I can just tag it as a player, and now when I play, when I collide, they'll disappear, and they will add to my score. So there you go. Now, what I want you guys to start thinking about is we have these simple mechanics, but like, for example, on our collect object, if you want to say have a particle effect play when you pick something up, this is where you would add that. So we have the same on collision enter, and then if it's tagged as a player, do these things. So right now we just say add to the point value or destroy the game object. But we could also add one of those, instantiate a particle here, or if you want to like just make an image show up, you could instantiate a sprite. So just start thinking about, the different lines of code we have throughout and how they could be utilized in other areas. But so that covers what we've done for day 3. Now, one more quick thing in regards to the particles. Right now, with the script we have, when the particle spawns, it flies off, but it also spins. If you have a particle that you don't want to spin, if we open our project moves script, you can see right here in the void update, it says that transform, rotate, 0, 0, random range 0 to -30. So if you just change this -30 back to 0, then it won't spin. So that's an easy fix you can make. But so if your game's up to this point, start thinking about how to, as a level, start building it out, extend it out beyond this little first area we made, add new platforms, add, different things. Think about different mechanics you might want to try out. But that covers day 3.